Hello, ladies and gentlemen of YouTube, and welcome to another episode of Fanalysis, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. I'm Retty4, this is Greyjoy91.
Hello.
This is Evan95.
Hello.
This is Jen Sarai1.
May I take your coats, Mr. and Mrs. Mason?
Who's such a gentleman. And Antoine Bandole.
I solemnly swear that I am up to no good.
Lead us in with the summary of this chapter, Matt, as complicated as it is.
Yeah, it's chapter 2 called Dobbys Warning. Harry meets a house elf named Dobby, and he gives him a warning. So let's get into it. That's what happens.
Yep. No question of that.
That's what happens. Fight me.
The first thing I like is the fact that this leads on straight from the previous chapter. Like I said, the ending of the last one, it opens up immediately with the whole Harry trying not to shout, and I like that because, of course, you would try not to shout seeing Dobby just standing there awkwardly on your bed.
I will say I have a particular amount of nostalgia for this particular chapter of this particular book because they used, clips from this chapter in the teaser trailer for the movie, like a lot.
Oh yeah, and the film's presentation of this, it was just spot on. I loved it.
And speaking of Dobby, I gotta say the whole concept of house elves is actually another one of those little things where it's very subtle world building, but it really tells you a lot about wizard society because now we have a clear example of wizard society being totally down with slavery. And the super sad thing is that it's almost a self-enforced indoctrination brand of slavery because Dobby is blatantly miserable serving the family he serves and is forced to abuse himself for whatever reasons and does so compulsively because of just how he's been trained to be and to think as a house elf. And the sad thing is that Dobby, in his desire for freedom, is the exception to the rule, as we find out later. Most house elves are content with being slaves, and the impression I have is that the only reason why Dobby wanted freedom was because the Malfoys were just that bad.
Yeah, it's
Do you
one
think
of those...
that's a natural
leads into
disposition for house elves, or is it something that maybe far back is something that got indoctrinated into them?
Yeah, precisely, because that's one thing that's never addressed as part of the world building.
Mm-hmm.
We never really...
Right.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, it may have been expanded on in Pottermore since, but in the books, we never get an explanation of whether or not it was something they were just naturally inclined and happy to do from the start, or whether or not it was something they kind of, as a culture, were forced into and kind of developed naturally over the course of time and in the course of actual enslavement from the wizarding race. It's never really clear.
I was waiting for someone who had read Pottermore to jump in and correct me, but I was going to raise that exact point. Is like I think that they were like conquered or subjugated actively by wizards long ago, and like it's just become a thing that they've sort of been fooled into thinking that they enjoy it, and even people like Hagrid just sort of go along with it. They like doing it. Just let them be.
Right.
Lovely.
And it could be
To not have
were...
any historical record of that, though, that would filter through for the people who actually care to look for that kind of thing. Hermione looking back into history, for example.
These are the parts where you have to echo yourself with like the world building. Like you really expect them to keep records of that.
Well,
like,
true.
Or depends on how ancient it is too. Like it just might not be records
it's like
of it.
they're bound. They appear to be born into like the service of the family that they, or at least the older families, at any rate, with like the blacks.
I mean,
like
the blacks have literally like heads on a mantle.
Yeah,
Now,
so
it would
Not a fan of that.
it would be fine if they do serve as like a natural inclination, but the issue I think that arises is that they specifically are for humans. Like they're at the service of humans versus just being like, oh yeah, you find them in the wild, like, oh yeah, we're helping out clean up the forest or whatever. No, it's always they're in a wizard house.
They're not like the minions from Despicable Me.
No.
No.
They're definitely tied. So that's why I think maybe something was nefarious because it's so deeply tied to wizards themselves. It's not like you see house elves in other places, just being really happy to serve anyone. Like you don't see centaurs with like house elves or like the Forbidden Forest that we're just here doing our thing. No, it's always with a wizard family.
I mean,
definitely noteworthy, but to be fair, we don't see that much of the world anyway, so that could be out there for all we know. But you're right, the fact that we haven't seen any of this or there's been no mention of it definitely leads towards the wizard being in the wrong there.
The whole way that they're given freedom or granted freedom just like reeks of like, okay, this is not like natural to your kind. Like you can't be born as like, I must be given clothes to be free. That's just the nature of my birth. Like that. This is like a species-wide curse or something that needs to be broken for every
That'd be
individual.
cool if it's like an old curse.
Especially when you see,
awesome.
you know, their difference in how they act when they are freed versus when they're not.
Yeah, it's something
Yeah.
I've always wanted to find out,
Yeah.
like the origin story of this situation, whether or not it be just a natural instinct of the creatures, or whether or not it is actually wizard enslavement. Regardless, because it's something. I mean, even if the wizarding world did, you know, enslave them, one thing I'd want to know is how, because elves are extremely powerful, as we see.
Right.
You know, they can primarily break like extremely powerful enchantments just with a snap of their fingers, literally.
I
So,
think it was probably an example
Well,
of
I mean,
like if I may
Goblins
be
got
allowed
subjugated.
Yeah.
Sorry.
If I may be allowed to speculate, I think it might actually be an example of some wizard or wizards finding some way to use the house elves' magic against them, like trick them into some sort of verbal contract that is now magically enforced on the entirety of their race.
I do like that idea
Yes.
because I find that their compulsions and their need to serve and all of the magical kind of tics that force them into doing things do reek of their own magic. I've always found that to be that's one
That
of the
they're
reasons.
held by their own magic,
Yeah.
because that should be the only magic
Yeah.
that should be able to hold them down.
Yeah, precisely. It's,
And it makes
whether
sense.
it be natural instinct doing that or wizarding, you know, enforcement having tricked them in the past, you know, both ways work to fit that idea. So I've always liked the idea that their own
The-
kind of magic sealing them.
The other thing is that it also really explains just how and why most house elves find the idea of freedom kind of abhorrent, because they spend their entire lives being completely controlled by this curse that makes them want to compulsively serve. They're basically in this mindset where they wouldn't know what to do with free will if they had it. It's like service gives them purpose. They always know what's going to happen. It's like the whole sort of, it's easier to just take orders than to think for yourself. And now that that's enforced on them by magic. So Dobby was able to use his freedom when he got freed because he wanted it. But when we see the other example of a freed house elf, which is Pinky, without a master to serve, she basically just died.
And the
Let it
brain
go.
and the brain.
Let it go.
Sorry.
Let it go.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Her name's Winky.
Yeah.
Winky. Wow.
It was just the image
Wow.
that called to mind. Sorry.
I'm sorry, I failed you all. Okay, Winky, thank you. Well, what happens to her when she's freed? Well, she can't handle it. She basically does the house elf equivalent of just diving headfirst into the bottom of a bottle and never looking back.
I mean, yeah. I mean, in this world, because of the way that the Ministry patrols magic as well, like, what does a free house elf do? Like, no one wants your services unless they're Dumbledore. Like, you know, like, you can't really hold down a job. Who's going to employ you? You're not allowed to use a wand. You're probably not really allowed to use your magic, like just any old where. They detect this in the Dursley's house, right? Like the levitation charm he uses.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
It's another example
I
of that
mean-
weird overlapping in the law because
Right. Is it the
House
detect
elves
underage
magic
magic,
is-
or is it just a detecting?
they detect
Yeah.
just the magic.
house
Otherwise,
elf
Right.
it makes
magic
no
is supposed to be
sense. Yeah.
sort of sideways and not connected to wizarding magic somehow. But in
And
this
also, if
case,
they
it
can
isn't,
detect
so-
magic everywhere, then they should be able to know, like, especially if they know specific charms or whatever that happened. Like, you should know when everyone's been killed by a
Yeah.
Vada
Yeah.
Kedavra. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, she.
Like,
that-
what's this
yeah, that's what I
green
mean.
dot
There
that
was
keeps
always a weird.
It's always-
popping up on them?
popping up on this
Yeah.
machine.
It's always
Yeah.
been a
That's the
really
thing.
bad world plot hole in the story.
Well, my personal way of justifying it is that the way it works is it's not so much a total
It could be
detection
location
on.
based.
Yeah, I was about to say that. It's like maybe the Ministry, knowing that there was a wizard child living in this household, basically just, okay, we're just gonna keep an eye on this household.
Actually, to
Or
be
maybe
fair,
because
they
it is actually
actually-
related to the trace because it could be proximity to the people being
I was just gonna
tracked
say that, yeah,
rather
that's
than
right.
everyone
But then I
else.
was
So
thinking about that. But if you're in the burrow and then you live with a wizard family and they're doing magic all around you, then that doesn't
Well,
really work. Because it's like
it is actually mentioned somewhere that the parents are
Oh,
kind
it
of
is?
expected to monitor their own children of wizarding families.
Yeah.
So,
because they won't be able to do
yeah.
it. Okay. that
So
makes
the
sense.
idea that
Yeah.
makes most sense in my head is that a kind of radius around
It's
every
proximity, yeah.
child is tracked from every underage witch and wizard is tracked, and any proximity magic done in that area counts. But if you've got like a family of adults just in the middle of nowhere and they're the only magic users for hundreds of miles, their magic won't be detected because they're the only ones there. So when Voldemort kills his family, there's no
Right.
one underage to track there, so it doesn't pick up.
I wonder how does that work though? Because do they just at birth go like, "That's a wizard. Let's put the trace on him," or is it just like how does
I imagine it's like a registration thing, like we have kid registrations for the government.
when did Harry get
yeah.
registered? He's with the Dursley the whole time. You know. what I
No,
mean?
but
Like,
he was born with his parents, wasn't he? So they would have done
But they
it.
don't
Yeah,
know
but
that
you
you're
would think-
magic until because Neville they didn't know he was magic until what, 10 or something or 9.
But see,
I don't
I don't
the
know.
thing is like it. I
they
mean,
just put it on every kid, and if they happen to be a squib or a muggle, then
right,
who
and
cares?
it's whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the truth is though, it's like I don't know how long like this rule has been in place though, because like I can't imagine Marvolo Gaunt like having his children in a hospital where like the people could
Well, we know
register them
we know
anyway.
we know
you
the statute of secrecy kicked in 1875, so it was
Okay,
at least
well,
that long
so
ago.
what I'm saying is like unless he had his children in a normal way, which he wouldn't have because Gaunt, but the ministry wouldn't have been able to put the trace on his
Yeah,
children because
true.
they were born in that cottage in the woods.
So we just don't
But
know
they
how
still
it
are
works.
aware of what they're doing.
Could be
So you
this,
know what I mean?
Could just be a super powerful abstract spell that hits every magical child regardless. Then, and they just track it based on that. We don't know. But the point is, it's very up and down as with all of our world
This is
building.
the
There's gonna be
in
a
terms of
lot of minister
consistency.
stuff in the next Fantastic Beasts movie. So who knows? Maybe
Yeah.
we'll get into that a little bit more.
This is the kind
unlikely,
of thing
but
where
you know,
this is the kind of thing where you just go, it's magic.
Yeah.
Like it can
Yeah.
do what it
we
needs
don't
to
have
do.
to explain
Like, yeah.
it.
It is still a flaw, though. While we do acknowledge that you can hand wave it away with the whole, it was never really supposed to be that important. It is still a flaw in her world building and her consistency. It's not a strength of her as a writer, or at least not a focus she spends time on. Because I'm sure she could come up with something if she wanted to. She just never put the effort in for that, and I think that works for this kind of story.
I think that's the key word is just effort, because when she does talk about things, when she expands on stuff, she definitely has those ideas there and like answers for them. It's just that this could have been a thing. It's just like I've just traced, that's just the plot,
Yeah,
and
precisely.
didn't really think about it further than that.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is rabbit hole kind of stuff that, like, you could basically make a story about this if you wish. But she did give herself the out that I remember somebody during Harry's trial says that they've always kept a close eye on this house in particular for obvious reasons because Harry's
right.
there. But anyway, yeah. But yeah, the point I was going with is like, what does a free elf do? Not much. So like,
Work for
what do you want?
Dumbledore. It's worth noting actually as well that they themselves, when they are freed and given wages thanks to the efforts of Hermione, it presumably they just carry on doing exactly what they always did, but now they have a pile of money accruing that they'll never use. They don't give us any explanation of what they actually go out and do outside of Dobby.
It's okay because wizards needing money.
Buy a bunch of hats, of course.
Yeah, but if
Buy a
they don't
bunch
care,
of that.
the people who didn't want to be freed and didn't want this freedom, culturally through generations, it's going to naturally
Right.
evolve, and this is going to solve the problem, of course. But immediately they're just going to basically just start accruing money and not do anything with it. It's like, okay, I'm being paid now, great, and just leave it. A bank account somewhere is piling up for their next generation to maybe make use of. It's just interesting to see what how the situation both originated and then evolved post story.
I like the thing that Dobby brings up about saying that he knew that Harry Potter was great, but he didn't know that he was decent and good. And that's something that also comes up in the 7th book with Grip Hook, where he's like, yeah, you're not like other wizards. And it's actually probably a good thing that he did not grow up in the world, because he would have
he would have been brought up in the more backward aspects of their culture and ideology.
Right.
He would have.
in the same
He
way that
would've-
Ron is, like, how Ron is dismissive of the house elves. Harry could have very well been in that too, because he's like, yeah, my mom and dad, like, we have house elves or whatever. Like, that's just how it is, But since he's out of it, he's able to have a better viewpoint of this kind of stuff.
As is Hermione
I
as
think
well.
it's
And Hermione
yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
I don't think it's especially uncommon for wizards to be good, but just for anyone, even a decent wizard like Ron, to treat a house elf as though it's a person is uncommon. So it's
Right.
like, because
Exactly.
they're that far beneath, like, notoriety, or not being worthy of note, I guess. They're like treated like dirt, really.
And even the nice
just like
ones
they're
still
invisible.
kind of take for granted the fact that, yes, you are my servant and I will treat you as such. Even the ones that are civil and polite and enjoy their servitude as much as they can, or appear to. They still have that kind of, okay, do what I say now kind of situation, even if there is that vague level of respect. So it's always present for all of them. I guess that's what stands out to Dobby the most. I love the dialogue though. Again, it's captured in the film perfectly when he's saying that, of Harry Potter's goodness, Dobby never knew. It's the way he kind of speaks. He immediately once again gets given that unique voice that Rowling is so perfectly.
And it's
capable of
crazy
delivering.
how not even the movie, but the audiobooks too. Like, everyone who reads her writing can do the voice. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and agree on it. Like, you have several different kinds of properties that do it the same.
It's not the accent;
audio-
it's the kind of cadence and the rhythm of the speech. she's not even actively using punctuation that much, but she manages to write it in such a way that the natural breathing moments and the stopping points and the kind of dragged on words always ring true for you. There's always this kind of uniformity to it, and everyone can agree on it.
I can't speak for like the Stephen Fry versions because I've never listened to them, but Jim Dale is like, these books, like the audiobooks, they predate the movies. His voice for McGonagall sounds like Maggie Smith. It just sounds like that. It sounds like Robbie Coltrane doing Hagrid. And she doesn't like describe like Dobby as having like sort of like a husky, wheezy voice, but that's how it comes across like in the reading. With, you know, the, like it works. He does sound like that.
And do credit to the actor in the movie who voiced Dobby, Toby Jones.
Right.
Did a great job.
Like, that's the voice that you hear in your head when you reread it. At least I do.
Again, the casting in the films just continues to impress.
Easily the best thing about the films for me. That and the music.
But, yeah, but it's almost backwards. It's like I can't believe how they got the voices before there was a cast.
Oh yeah,
you know, like that's for me. With Snape excluded. Snape sounds different, but that's obvious.
Well, yeah.
No one was going to do Rickman. He just took the role for himself. And I guess I'm Snape now.
Yeah.
Everyone else's interpretation can bend around me, which is just brilliant.
Snape is a lot more not noble in the books, shall we say?
Yeah.
As we said in the first book, just his general personality and the way he speaks, and he barks more in the book, which Alan Rickman just doesn't do. So your interpretations kind of they blend together and are a bit warped overall. Not that it's bad, because his interpretation is fantastic, but it's worth noting. But yeah, Dobby, Harry's having this conversation with Dobby, and it's gradually introducing more elements of the house elf situation. He's punishing himself routinely, in rather amusing ways, even given the situation.
It's also the kind of the sadness of it, where it's like what Harry's trying to do is placate Dobby and get him to quiet down, and he's saying these nice things to him to calm him down. But ironically, those nice things are what makes Dobby louder and want to punish himself more, because it's reminding him of how much he fucking hates the Malfoys. And as a house elf, he can't bring himself to actually admit it. So every single time he thinks about how horrible they are, he's like, I have to punish myself again because Dobby almost spoke ill of his family.
Yeah. And I like, as you said, he's trying to placate Dobby and get him to be quiet, but I like that it's not in any way a manipulation. He's being earnest in what he's saying. It's just it's also the fact that, can you please also be quiet because we needed to. He's not being dishonest and trying to say, I like you more than I do. Otherwise, he's being himself, and it carries across very well. It's nice. It's a really nice introductory scene that kind of establishes the foundation of their future bond, because these two do have a connection. That is rather strong and profound given the lack of presence Dobby has in the series overall. He's definitely relevant, especially compared to the films. It's one of the biggest things I wish I hadn't cut. But he's not, omnipresent in the narrative. He only really dips in every now and then. So to have such a connection with him and have that established this early, I think is very good. Very well done.
What is the plot that he's referring to? Unless I'm just like really daft.
He's talking about the Malfoy situation. He's going to deliver the
book. Does he think Malfoy's about to open the chamber, or like what is it that he knows?
He knows the mechanism is being delivered, basically.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So this is one I didn't really understand. Does Malfoy know that he have a Horcrux in his possession?
He doesn't know what it is.
No,
it's actually discussed later in the series where Voldemort probably gave Lucius Malfoy the diary, explained what it did in regards to the chamber, but he didn't tell him what it was or what it was that gave the artifact this power. And Lucius, being Lucius, was probably smart enough not to ask too many questions and just figured, oh, it's Lord Voldemort's magic. He can do crazy things that I can't even think about. Of course he can make something like this. It's Voldemort.
Do we know what prompted him to even want to open?
I believe it's the raids that are coming on his house. He's trying to get rid of some of the artifacts.
I know he's trying to get rid of it, but I felt like if Dobby is coming in here saying that, by saying like he took something out and then it got into possession of, he was going to open the chamber or whatever, or it was his responsibility.
Yeah. Basically, it would discredit Arthur Weasley, because Arthur Weasley is starting to crack down on, basically the sort of seedy shit that the Malfoys are into. So
what it is Voldemort gave it to him for like safekeeping, and then after Voldemort had been gone for so many years, Lucius decided, I can use this as a get out of jail free card, and like Voldemort's never coming back. He won't know, and then the events proceed from there.
Yep. And then just the flinch when Voldemort breaks the head off of Lucius Malfoy's cane in the seventh movie. Just the way that Jason Isaacs just flinches when that happens.
I always find it funny as well that Dobby is delivering both the literal and figurative plot for the series, or for this book rather.
Yeah.
It's a actual plot and it's the plot of the book. So yeah, always found that amusing. But yeah, he gets that across. He lets loose the secret that he's been keeping these letters from Harry. Worth noting as well, Harry is Harry is lamenting his friends.
Yeah, exactly, and being like, I'm gonna stop thinking about them because it's painful. It's like, damn.
Yeah.
And all the way up to this point,
Harsh.
he's been feeling this, horrible background, like dread of, are they my friends? He's all that doubt is hitting him because of his situation, and it makes sense. You understand his sadness and his dread about it. Yeah, his plight. Perfect example of the word.
And also, I think we mentioned this before, but this being a 21st century book, like letters are an actual thing.
Yes,
if you wanted to keep in contact with your friends, it'd be maybe a phone call. So maybe for Hermione, he could have had a phone call, but for anyone else, it would have to be a letter.
Yeah, thinking about it, it really is only the Dursley situation that stops him from having constant access to communication with Hermione. Because if he had, a mobile phone, which even then was around, or at least a house.
Did she ever call? I feel like there was a moment when they called or someone called him.
Because Ron calls in the next
Ron,
book.
that's what it was.
Right.
And hilarity ensues.
It
not
goes bad.
quite
It goes
figuring
badly.
it out, all that. Yeah.
And then he tips off Hermione, don't do that, because I fucked that up.
But yes, that's the only real reason. Because it occurred to me when we were reading through the chapters actually for this recording, that you kind of forget that letters are the slowest form of communication you could possibly do in this day and age. Just email. There will be people wizards in the modern age are unable to have access to that kind of instantaneous information because their magic just disables technology. So it'd be interesting to see how many wizards stop or start to slow down on the magic for the simple practical uses that they have available. Certainly the Muggleborns.
Yeah, and the other thing that I do find kind of interesting when you stop and think about it, though, is that before the rise of technology, their use of owls that deliver messages actually gave them that exact same advantage over Muggles, because the owls are a lot faster than messengers on foot.
And more reliable than the alternatives that the Muggles had.
Exactly. So it's like in their heyday, the wizards were the ones with the huge technological advantage over the Muggles. But the problem is that the wizards kind of stagnated and they kind of fell into this. I kind of get the impression that their whole society fell into this sort of inward spiral where they kept on refining what they already had, but they never came up with anything new.
Too many holdovers from the past situations. And cultural developments they have. I mean, magic will always have the edge. No matter how advanced tech gets, it will always have the edge because it's built on the idea of the abstract. Oh no, a missile heading towards me. Vanish. Irrelevant. Doesn't matter how good that missile is, doesn't matter how fast, doesn't matter how powerful, it's gone. So that kind of idea applied to all branches of technology, it always applies. But then there are certain more mundane elements that don't get refined because they don't need to. If owls are what you're used to and you've grown up with and they've always worked, why make them faster?
Exactly.
Proven
and
by the fact that they
other
don't
thing
use their
is,
Patronuses generally. Why don't people just send messages to Patronuses all the time? It's a much better form of communication.
Yeah, and the other thing is, why would a wizard?
Well, no, of course, but they'd learn to do that, wouldn't they? They'd try and practice that more in the society if it was a thing. The higher level.
Yeah, but you wouldn't do that just to send a message. Like, I mean, if the study of that is,
it takes a lot of energy as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And also, apart from anything else, generally they can travel by apparition or flue powder wherever they really need to be. So there's that as well.
Yeah, that's the other one. I'll just teleport to the person, say something, or hand them the letter physically, and then teleport back. It's like, why else?
Right.
It's one of those little things that kind of makes sense because the problem is that they got magic that allows them. It's almost like they use magic to work around every single problem they're faced, so they don't have to solve the problem.
Yeah, good way of putting it, actually. Yeah, that's the kind of how their entire society works, and stagnates as a result. Because ultimately, if you found a way around the problem, you never have to solve it, and why would you find another way around it? Yeah,
exactly.
But again, this is all kind of well-built discussion stuff that she never really put much attention in anyway. So it's just like Matt said earlier, rabbit hole material.
Yeah.
This is for us nerds.
Yeah, the nerdiest of nerds alone.
Yeah, she's a genius enough person that I know she's thought about this. She just decided it wasn't necessary for this story. That's all.
And that's proven by the fact that she's putting so much attention on Pottermore. She wouldn't be doing that outside of the fact that she enjoys talking about her world if she didn't have
it's
an
impossible
interest and
for her
passion
to
for the world
be
building.
as like it's impossible for her to have written this and not have thought about that stuff. She just decided it wasn't relevant
at the time.
I never want to impugn her intelligence
of
or
course
anything
not,
that with this.
Right.
And I think that she made the right call. Despite being a massive fan of world building and setting stuff like this and just discussing it in general, I definitely think that it would have weighed down certainly the younger viewers' enjoyment of the
especially
series
if
they'd started
9,
it
right?
in.
Yeah.
Obviously, she didn't have to go full ham on it and shovel it down, but even like a smaller amount than she did, or the larger amount than she did in small scale stuff, would have been a bit much, I think. It's not the strength of her writing. It's about the characters and about the dynamics between them and the flow of the narrative. You don't care. When you're in the scenes with these characters, you don't care about the background stuff. Stopping and having a musing about the nature of this magic or the nature of this communication method would have been tedious and disruptive. Moving on with what actually happens in the chapter, of course. Dobby is threatening. The situation with Dobby escalates to the point where he's threatening to say, you must not go back to Hogwarts because plot, literal and figurative. And Harry is saying, "I have to go back. I have to go back," and that drives Dobby to literal blackmail. We'll give you the letters, and if you don't, then I'm going to have to go and just ruin your day.
Yes, and the pudding.
Yeah. Does anyone have any? I know it was slightly different in the film because he was on the floor then, but the image of Dobby just on top of a kitchen cupboard and just hovering the cake to me was just comically amusing back in the day, even now. I don't know why, because it makes more kind of dramatic sense in the film the way they do it, but in the book it was always like, oh god, that visual. Just him crouched up near the ceiling with the cake levitating in the middle of the room.
Yep. Personally, I just love how when the cake hits the fan, I just love how both in the book and the film how Uncle Vernon tries to gloss this over. I'm sorry, it's my nephew. He's very disturbed meeting strangers.
I mean, what else would you say?
Yeah, that line delivery is very disturbed.
That's what you have to. Like, if someone does that, you're like, yeah, we try to keep him away.
Yeah, meeting people upsets him.
It's also
that's when he gets the warning.
They're almost willing to let this one slide until the birds come.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Did you know she had a fear of birds?
Yeah.
You bastard!
Yeah.
Dursley. But yeah, it's
oh my god,
it's an amusing moment.
Just like Life with the Dursleys, and that's the punchline, like the end of every episode.
The sitcom intro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, the main thing that comes up.
Number 4 Privet Drive.
Yeah.
That's the series. Yeah.
I'd watch it, and so would a lot of other people I know. But yeah, just the next thing that comes up obviously is the warning from the Ministry. This is the first time we get that letter flying in and saying, no, thank you, please stop doing this. I like that it also talks about it leads with the Hogwarts expulsion thing, and at the end, oh, by the way, this is also illegal, please don't do it again, with the statute of secrecy. It slips it in at the very end that it's, oh, by the way, this is illegal. So apart from that whole expulsion thing we've been talking about just now, why would you not lead with that in that kind of situation? If you're a manager of law in this world and you've got this letter to write, or just magically write, because I guess you didn't have time to write it and send it in that time.
Well, it's worse to be expelled than to be killed.
Yeah, that's true. That is true, actually. The priorities of this world are skewed. So yeah, maybe it's that same reason for the law.
Yeah, and then Uncle Vernon, questions like, "You didn't tell us you weren't allowed to use magic."
Yes.
Slipped your mind, did it?
Going back to what Matt said previously about Dursley being such an enjoyable, loving to hate him. It's precisely. It's the revelry of the moment for him. It's like
the narrator, when you get to this point, he's going, "Forgot to mention it. Slipped your mind, I dare say."
Yeah,
you can almost hear him
precisely, and that's the only way you can read it as well. I read that in the
Yeah.
exact same way. It's like, "Slipped your mind, dare say." That's like just you have to. It's brilliant, and it's a good example of how she does that because there's no kind of confusion about that. Everyone thinks that when they read that. That's the sort of thing they're picturing in their minds. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, commenters, but I imagine that's the case for most people anyway. She has a great. She manages to get everyone on the same page very well.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly in the realm of characters.
It's almost like like she's a stage manager. Like it's almost like you're reading like a play direction almost without like reading the stage direction.
Dursley leans into camera as you're imagining this. And it's why I like to call Hogwarts a character as well, because she does the same thing for the Hogwarts building itself. She defines that very well. The tree by the lake, everyone imagines pretty much the same thing in their heads.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of thing. But yeah, the warning owl is sent, and we get the return to his usual situation of being locked away and told
doubly
he's not going
locked
back.
this time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Of course, I do want to mention just one little change between the book and the film. The book described Uncle Vernon as paying a man to fit bars into Harry's window. In the movie, he does that himself.
Yeah.
It's like he's straight up there with a freaking
Taking
power
the
drill.
initiative. Yeah.
Well,
But
and them
in the-
installing a cat door and feeding him through the cat door.
Yeah.
Oh, do you call them cat
Wow.
doors or do you call them cat flaps?
Yeah, it says
Yeah,
cat
cat
flap in the
flap,
book.
but
I noticed
it's
that.
the
Yeah,
same
but we call
thing.
them cat doors. Yeah.
Oh, we call them cat flaps because they usually just...
And the sad thing is that because they specifically installed this cat flap to feed Harry, they didn't put it low on the door so it would look like a cat flap. It'd be like halfway up, so it's like at convenient hand height for putting a plate of food through.
Oh, I got the
Which
impression it
means
was
that
still by the floor because she slides it underneath.
Even more demeaning.
Because she slides it through onto the floor, so he doesn't have to be there to pick it up, doesn't he? Otherwise,
Well,
they'd have
the
to
reason
hold
why
it
I'm-
there.
I thought it was the floor.
I can't get over
Yeah.
the fact that it's not even like it's cold.
Yeah.
It's not even like heated up.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. I mean, it's just so awful.
Yeah.
Even in prison, you get
Yeah.
a hot meal.
Yeah, it's true. It would actually be better situation. Better conditions in prison. Ironically enough,
Yeah.
that's not irony, but whatever. Yeah, but then obviously another great chapter ended with Ron arriving. He has the dream. He has the nightmare. We didn't mention actually. This chapter does establish that he's been having nightmares about Voldemort because it does mention that it was only a few weeks ago that whole situation happened. Worth noting that he is having his first bout of nightmares basically about him, which is it's going to be a recurring thing throughout the series. So good to mention it here.
Yep.
And obviously has another one, a more mundane one here, but he has another one leading into the end of the chapter, and wakes up to find Ron peeking through his window bars.
I like that transition between a dream to that because that might just be like a dream, like euphoria, like and just like a hallucination. Like Ron's not there outside my window right now. I'm just dreaming again.
Precisely. It's just the sensory input translating into his brain, and he's like, "Wait, what?" Wakes up and then sees it. I like the like I said, the transition. She does that a lot actually. Dream transitions are something she does very well.
Yeah, but like I remember in the last book, he had like this random dream, and we were like, "Yeah, so that happened," because it was so weird. But normally they have something to do with the chapter, like this.
And that was when she actually just ended the chapter, wasn't it? It was a reminder of who we need to pay attention to, as you said. Yeah, I'd forgotten that. Yeah, previous book. But yeah, that's the end of the chapter, guys. Any closing thoughts before we wrap up?
Well, really the big highlight of this chapter is definitely the introduction of Dobby himself, because it's like he doesn't show up in this book very often. It's like, but what little you do see of him, it really is very telling.
As ever, she gets a lot of information across very quickly regarding these characters, always with those snapshots. Just perfect clarity in the first intro, and then breadcrumbing it the rest of the way for both the plot and character, because obviously he's so tied to the actual plot of this one.
And it's nice the way that she sort of layers in that mystery without stating there's a mystery here. Like, so we know he has like a wizarding family that he serves, but we're not told who. And really, if you're like 9, maybe you're wondering that in the back of your mind subconsciously, but you're not like, I need to get to the bottom of this, or like surely it's like Voldemort's family or something. When there's a reveal, like there's a payoff to it, and you don't necessarily see it coming, especially if you're a little kid,
And the story doesn't ride on that reveal as well. You don't need that.
It's very cloaked.
knowledge. It's just something that it's an additional kind of that's a cool little treat, rather than I needed this explained for any of this to make sense, which is very good.
And the thing I find that makes the reveal work better is the fact that Dobby, in his mannerisms, he wants to spill the beans and tell Harry every little detail. He wants to say Malfoy, he wants to say diary, but because he's compelled by his whole enslavement to not say a word, all he can say is, there is something that's going to happen. It's going to be bad. It's going to be scary, but I can't tell you because, oh my God, bad Dobby, I've already said too much.
It was a clue, sir. when he said it wasn't about when it wasn't about Voldemort.
Oh dear.
But
A
yeah,
clue.
that's the end of this chapter, and looking forward to talking about the next one with you guys. Let us know in the comment section down below anything we've missed or anything you want to discuss in greater length that we have covered. I am Retty 4, and I still don't have an outro.
Gridget at 91. Goodbye.
Evan over 95. We hope you guys enjoyed. We'll see you guys later.
Justin Loyal, unafraid of toil. Good night.
Yeah.
Antoine Bandelay, mischief managed.
Goodbye.